Hello, everybody. I hope you're enjoying your lunch. Great meal. Thank you to WITI. I have on stage with me a number of women from Applied Materials. And I'm going to start further down the line, but we're going to be talking here about 3 simple truths to career development. A number of areas there, and we've had quite a bit of discussion before we came up here, so some good banter is about to ensue. I'm going to start on my far end. I have Elizabeth Mayo, who's the Global Product Manager, and she's also a Global Product Manager, and you're also the President of the Women's Professional Development Network.
That's correct.
At Applied Materials.
So my name is Elizabeth Mayo. I've been at Applied Materials for about 3 years. For those of you that don't know Applied Materials, we're an engineering and technology firm. We span a number of industries ranging from display to semiconductor to solar. And so my role was formerly in technology. I transitioned more into a business and product marketing role, which is where I am now. And as Amanda mentioned, I'm also working with our Women's Professional Development Network internally, creating a community of networking for women.
Great, thank you. And next to her, we have, let me make sure I've got this right, Hillary Barnhart, who's the Senior Director of Business Ops and a senior member of the team at Applied Materials.
That's right. I've been at Applied longer than any of the other women on this panel, and I'll say no more. And I work in business operations, order fulfillment, sales and operations planning, and revenue risk management. And I've had the good fortune to be at Applied, where there are many different opportunities available to women, to men and women, in many different areas. I've worked in engineering, program management, marketing, technical development, and as well as several business transformations. SAP implementation, so been really given a good opportunity to learn about many different functions and many of our different customers.
So as it relates to career development, you've got a lot to say up here today. And next to her, we have Suchitra Subrahmanyan, who's the Senior Director of Business Development at Applied Materials.
Thank you, Amanda. I've also been at Applied for over 15 years and had the opportunity, started with a very technical role of process engineering, but I found soon that for that to be very limiting, and I wanted to have a bigger view of the ecosystem. So I started transitioning out to more like product management, and then more business management, operations, and then finally I'm in the role of strategy and business development, where we look at mergers and acquisitions, venture investments. So again, I've been fortunate, like she just pointed out, Hillary pointed out, that within the same company, I've had the opportunity to do multiple roles and really have the ability to develop different skills, which really enables you to go after and do new things in the company.
Okay, thank you. And then finally to my right, we have Jennifer Sun, who's the Engineering Director for the Etch Division of Applied Materials.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Sun. I have been working at Applied for a little over 13 years. Work on start out in the supply chain management, move on to program management, and now I'm in engineering. Basically driving all the critical chamber development and also material for the plasma etch chamber. And the one thing I love about working at Applied is that if you have the can-do attitude, you can do virtually everything and anything.
Great. Well, let's jump right into our discussion then. You know, we're talking about career development. One key theme that we seem to notice, or I've noticed at least throughout the conference so far, is this notion of branding. You know, we as women, in terms of branding ourselves, what's our own image? What do we want to be portraying? How are we portraying ourselves? Do we even know? So let's start there. Let's start with this core concept of branding, what it means, how to do it the right way, and what some of the challenges are. Let's start with you, Suchitra.
I actually find that branding has to evolve over time. I constantly ask myself, you know, what brand do I represent? And I often find that based on your roles or the situations that you're in, you have to adapt and portray the brand that you want to be. And it can be challenging, but at the same time, you know, you always have a chance to redefine yourself or redefine your skills and what you can bring to the company.
Mm-hmm. Would any of you say that it's a challenge in and of itself to figure out what you want your brand to be?
Being authentic, I think, is one of the biggest challenges in branding, because the social tools, social media tools are out there, so that's easy. What's really hard is, what is my authentic self? Mm-hmm. And one way to find that out, scary as it may be, is to do a 360 feedback. Participate in one of the, I did that recently, where you have other people give you their honest feedback anonymously on how you're perceived. And that's scary, because a lot of people perceive you differently from how you think you're perceived. And then you have to decide, is that how I want to be, or should I try to develop myself differently?
Yeah, just because you think, okay, I want my brand to be that I'm outspoken, that I'm energetic, and that I'm, go-getter. And that's a great brand to have. But how do you stop that perception from being annoying and pushy? And so there's two sides to every brand, and you have to make sure that what you're doing to achieve your brand is perceived the way you're intending it to be.
Mm-hmm. And what about consistency? That seems to be a big marketing term that I hear quite a bit.
Yes, to me, because the branding is so important, it's almost like a symbol that you have to carry with you wherever you go. So the consistency is to reaching a certain level that when people go to you, if I may use like a Starbucks as example, when we go to Starbucks, get a cup of coffee or latte, you know exactly what you're going to get. And I think that's kind of the caliber, that's kind of the consistency performance that we like to project.
Okay.
But I think it is important to have, this isn't like when they branded cows, where, this is a brand that you're going to wear till you die. You are a technical person. Coming from a PhD in chemistry, as Suchitra and these folks mentioned, it's a great opportunity to test out all sorts of new skill sets. But if your brand is that you're very good technically, you almost can be branded that way in a negative. And so how do you convince people of what else you can do? And that became a big challenge for me. How do I get out there, and how do I show other things that I'm good at? How do I evolve my brand so that I can grow and develop within the company?
Yeah, I have to make sure not to get into a rut. I was known as the product management lady, the business transformation lady. Recently someone said, I think you're the Kaizen lady, which is, it's a continuous improvement description in Japanese. And I said, I don't know if I want to be the Kaizen lady. Yes. Is that what you really think I am? So be careful, because what do you think your customers need, and how do you best serve that?
Okay. So it's consistency, it's authenticity.
Yes.
Things like this. What about, let's talk about some pitfalls. Everyone has experienced branding pitfalls. Is Applied Materials willing to talk about some problems that you've had in the past that you had to overcome branding-wise?
About 10 years ago, maybe it was 8 years ago, Applied Materials had the slogan, the brand message, information for everyone. It was odd, black stickers with white lettering. But now, information for everyone means there's no security in anything you're sending, right? Information for everyone means wide open, security threats. So now it's the trusted brand, right? Now that, because the world has changed. So be really careful what messages you're putting out there.
So that's also a good example, too, then, of what you were saying before about a brand evolving and not digging your heels in and saying, well, we're only this, and actually listening to your customers, listening to, your employees about what they think the brand is as well. Any other examples from the company?
Yeah, so I could speak to another example, probably going back maybe about 7 years ago. We used to call ourselves Total Solutions Company.
Okay.
And of course, our intent was to say to customers, look, we've tested out this suite of tools, and it's going to do exactly what you want on your device, and please buy these set of 5 or 6 tools from us. Over time, we found that was not that well received by customers. They felt like we were packaging weak products with stronger products, and so we had to basically step away from that and instead show, what our integration results showed, and they can make their own decision on what tool sets to buy and how to mix and match between the different competitors. So that's another example.
Again, building in some of that flexibility.
Yep.
Any other branding?
To the point you mentioned that you have to know, how you're perceived and what your customers are looking for. And, when you're in a company, you want a brand to be something like problem solving, but some of your customers don't want you to solve all their problems. They want you to solve one problem and then go away. Other customers want you to hold their hands, take them to lunch, show them where the bathroom is. Other customers have different needs. So your brand doesn't have to change. You can still be a problem solver. You can still be a go-getter, but then you adapt that to what your customers and the people that you're working with are needing out of you at that point in time.
Okay. Good branding points. Make sure that you take notes if you have questions for them at the end. Let's talk a little bit about career development challenges. This one's a big bucket. And since many of you have had different roles even within Applied Materials, talk about some of the challenges that you've personally experienced. Get into some specific details if you can. Do you want to start again, Elizabeth?
As I mentioned, I think one of the biggest ones was the transition from a technical role to more of a business role. And it seemed like, you kept talking to people and looking, and there's lots of roles. And in terms of how I overcame that, it was simply, I just sought out somebody that was in a higher level role that I wanted to be in, and I just kind of pushed myself on them. And I said, hey, you look like you're struggling with this. Could I help with that?
Wait, it wasn't serendipity, it was strategy?
It might have been a little bit of strategy and effort. So, but it was serendipitous that it worked out. But I think an interesting point is to know that, as they mentioned earlier, that serendipity is what you make of it. So a good opportunity is only as good as what you do with it.
Yes.
And ask. And so in wanting to change careers, you just had to ask somebody, and it was almost as easy as that.
Wow, I believe that. Let's move down the line. Let's go to Hillary.
My greatest challenge was when I was told that I'd been selected to lead a major quote-to-cash transformation, and that I would be taken out of my line management role and put into a role where all of my employees would actually not directly report to me. And so I had to learn, I was humbled, tremendously humbled, and of course, as Elizabeth said, you don't say no. You say, what a great opportunity, I will embrace it with my heart.
God help me.
God help me, right. And ask for help and ask for people's opinions. And so I was taught the art of how to lead by influence, negotiate, get feedback from others, understand that when you want to impose change on others, they don't want to always embrace that change. They need to fully accept accountability and ownership. And the use of scorecards to enable different regions maybe to compete for the greenest scorecard in training compliance, and to understand cultural differences, and to realize that tops-down sponsorship is critical. Being able to go to executives and say, it is really important to me why this work, and they'll say, well, but it's not important to me. Aha! Why is it important to them? And to really have to figure out by listening why is something important to someone, and then follow that channel down so they then think it's their idea, right? And they make it successful, and in the end you're successful. So by moving out of that line management into influence management, I learned the art of leadership, which is mobilizing people to agree to struggle for unified aspirations, right? They internalize and they want to struggle for these common aspirations.
One point to what you said is about intent with branding. So leading with influence sounds great, influencing people. And it's just one step away from manipulating the people you work with. and so the difference really comes, in my opinion, it's what you said earlier, in authenticity and intent. If your intent is to do a good job and to interface well and to influence the right answer, it'll probably come across that way. And so there's two sides to that coin.
All right, Suchitra, what about you?
Okay, so I'll add 2 points. One to Elizabeth's point where you start with what you're good at and then you build upon that. So so if you're a technical person, moving to something like product management comes relatively easily, because then you can still use your product knowledge and your technical knowledge to do the next step. So I think that was at least my transition, very similar to Elizabeth's. And then to another point that Hillary brought up, again, I was in a very similar position where there was reorg of our account technology organization, and basically, again, I went from being a manager to almost like an individual contributor, but there was also another opportunity that was being looked at because nobody was doing that role, and I was offered this unique position of, for the first time, trying to figure out how do we sell our product upgrades to the existing install base, and then I had to start from scratch, but it was a very good experience because again it was something new that I had never done before. I had to build my team from being just by myself and to another 3 or 4 people who could help me in that effort, and I think it was a great opportunity because again I went from being very humbled and distraught over it to being very successful at the end of it.
Here's that humble word again. We need to nix that from the vocabulary because we need to be like down here talking about intent and saying what you want, asking for what you want, something else that we're hearing across here.
But I think being humble isn't actually against that. I think it's the intent. If your intent is to grow and to learn and you're approaching it from a humble point of view, I think that's the right attitude to have. It doesn't mean you're not eager. It doesn't mean you're not a go-getter. It just means that you respect where you are right now. And then, humble versus arrogant.
Right? You're not the know-it-all.
2 steps away.
Right. Exactly. You're not the know-it-all anymore. But also knowing what your strengths are.
Yeah. Or the company needs you in some other capacity, and you just have to go with the change direction and go with that flow.
Okay.
You can humbly go do anything.
Humbly go forth. Jennifer, what about you in terms of career development? Like how are things for you when you first started, even with applied materials? Like what are some of the things that were helpful to you in your career here?
So I've been with over 13 years. I think that a lot of you sitting there share this with us is that being a female in the engineering world, it's like you're one of those unique creatures, right? So I think that, again, number one, I think if you want to really excel at what you're good at, you have to have the passion. And be consistent and have the can-do attitude. And also, I think that as you climb up the rank, it's very important that we know how we can build ally out of your own organization, leverage the resource and the influence, right? A lot of the panel here talk about the influencing, and I think that's one thing that we really need to learn. And also, if we can really master how to influencing, we can get a lot of things achieved.
Look out, because these ladies are all going to be helping each other out now from here on out. I want to move on a little bit, just in the essence of time, to talking now to that point about networking and networking challenges, networking opportunities that exist within your organization, within your divisions, within teams, within any work that you do outside of the organization. Let's jump a little bit into networking. Who wants to start?
I think for me, networking in the technology world is that if you are good at certain things, get your name out there, like you become the node, so that when people have questions, they naturally come to you, and then you're going to build out your network.
I'm a big fan of actions. So with this, if you want to be positioned as an expert, talk to your marketing director, talk to the overall head of marketing. They would love to position you as an expert. That's one way of doing it as well. But make that networking happen.
And a lot of people think of networking as a bad word, as you're taking advantage of people, or you're only getting to know somebody for what you can get out of them. And it's really not that, because if you think to yourself, if somebody asked me a question, or somebody came and knocked on my door for help, you would probably answer them. And I would say most people are willing to offer that up, and it doesn't have to feel dirty to go and network and to come to events and introduce yourself and pass out cards. So.
And look at what Jocelyn said when she was up here from Facebook, saying that women have more friends on Facebook, just as an example. We're the ones that are sharing things, posting the photos.
Well, the hardest thing about networking for me for many years was getting my nose out of the book and out of the office and getting out there. Right? I mean, women are so intent at doing a good job and working hard and getting the results. We don't make the time to come to networking events. We don't make the time to go to those association meetings, to volunteer to be on board. Right? I mean, if you don't put forth the effort, then things aren't going to happen for you. I was in a training class. At the end of the class, I walked up. It was in just a few minutes, and I spoke to a woman I had met at the end. I said, let's go for coffee sometime. Great. Had coffee with her. We had all kinds of connections. Then she said, well, why don't I do this, and I can do this? And so find out what are those mutual values you can bring to each other. What are the, if there's a person you identify or a group you want to connect with, what 3 things can I give them? What 3 things could I get from them? Make it mutually beneficial. And avoid bias. Get out of your common network. Go to another field, another function. Make sure you're authentic and you're not just, as Elizabeth had said, quantity, right? It's very nice to have many cards, but it's the quality that really matters.
And going out and getting a lot of cards is only as good as the number of people you email or call.
Yes, right.
So you can all pass your business cards to each other, then you go home and you can put them in your drawer.
Yeah.
Or you can actually network.
Right, exactly.
So I find that in the Bay Area, there are many, many professional networks, entrepreneurship networks, and I've personally benefited from going to a lot of those events and kind of maintain a steady stream of networking over time and going to conferences, learning from those, and seminars. I think that's a unique thing about Bay Area, that there are so many different professional, even for women, there are many, many women's professional organizations that are out there.
Great. Yeah.
What was the quote that we saw earlier from Madeleine Albright?
Oh, something about women who don't help women should go to hell or something
Yeah,
like that.
exactly.
I love that.
It was something like there's a special place in hell for women who don't help women.
You have to share your network.
Yeah.
Share your network.
Interesting paraphrase. I heard a speaker one time make a statement about how when women, whatever role they're in, when they look up, what do they see? And let's say there's 10 positions above you. You'll see one woman up there, if you're lucky. And the farther up you go, the smaller that number gets. And so instead of saying we become more competitive with each other, because it's women competing against women for that one role, when it should be women helping women to take 5 roles. And that's women networking.
That's right.
Jennifer, what about you?
Exactly, and I think that Hillary just hit it to home. That is the women, right? We tend to do everything, want to take care of everything, and it's so rare that we come out and the social and the network, right? And I think that this is a great forum, and I think that we should really encourage each other to do this more.
And if I may just add one thing too, I also think about networking not just as something like this, where we're, chit-chatting and whatnot, but also take this outside of this room, outside of this building. Take it back with you to your hometowns. Take it back with you to your offices. It's about that shared experience that you have. So it's much more than a handshake and a smile. Are there any final thoughts over the, branding, career development, networking before we open it up for questions?
With career development, Suchitra and I had a very interesting conversation over lunch. I'd be curious to catch the other ladies' thoughts on it. It was about how do you handle and how important it is the person that you work for and your ability to connect with them. If you don't have the same values or you're not complimenting correctly your boss, women have a tendency to say, well, I owe it to them. They hired me, I should stay, or I've only been here for 6 months. It's, I'll wait and see what happens. When in reality, if you're not happy, get out. And I think you've had we've all probably had that similar type of experience. And it's a hard thing to walk away from, but it's an important part of career.
Well, again, if you know your strengths.
You can learn from the good managers and the not so good managers. And if you recognize your own values and are able to recognize other people's values, I think you can make things work. Sometimes there are intolerable people, but it's always worthwhile to give it a chance, because sometimes, we talked with the communication and networking. When you get to know somebody, sometimes things come out that you may not realize. Maybe this person is acting this way because of another reason. So dig a level deeper before making snap judgments. And then establish yourself, and don't accept meekly, well, this person is imposing upon me this person is imposing upon me. Look at yourself, look at them, empathize, and try to understand the situation before making snap judgments, because the grass is not greener, right? It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't know, and the devil you don't know can sometimes be pretty darn mean.
But I think the pairing of values is very, very important. And so if you're a person that wants to look at the whole picture and the whole field and get involved in your project, and your manager has a value system, it doesn't have to be a personal disagreement. It can be a value system that the way that they do business is, your job is this, go sit over here and do that. And that's a good thing to learn from, but if you want to grow, that sometimes you will just hit that wall. And I think that's when you have to look at yourself and move on.
And figure out a strategy to get out.
Right, yes.
But not make it a carefully planned, be rational.
Or you could wait for a very serendipitous event.
And go to many networking opportunities, define your brand, use that network to establish your brand. There you go.
Did we hit all the buzzwords?
Yeah.
To add to one point that Elizabeth just made, I think complementary skills is something I've found to be very important. So if you and your manager have complementary skills, actually you can achieve something that your manager, he or she, couldn't accomplish. So I think as a team, you come out with even a better result. So I've often found that to be a very good combination, to seek out that complementary set of skills in your manager.
Or mutual mentoring.
Right. And I think any situation could be good, could be bad. If it's a bad situation, see it as a learning opportunity. And I think that oftentimes, and I remember that years ago when I started my first job, one of the guys told me, don't ever leave the work because you hate your boss. So basically, I think what he meant is that learn from the situation, right? Your manager may not see things the same view as you do, but we need to learn how we can better communicate, because learn how to manage your boss is also a very important skill.
Managing up. I love that term. Sure. All right, well, let's open it up to all of you. I'm seeing heads nodding. This is a good thing. Who has questions here about career development for our panelists? Any of the areas? I know that we have our mouths full a little bit. Anybody? Okay. A microphone, here you go.
Hi, I always have these questions. I've been working for 10 years, but I cannot make it to a management position. And I don't know why. I don't know why it's stopping me. I know I have the skills. I know I need to gain some other management skills, but I know how to present myself as a person who can achieve a management position.
Have you asked?
No. No, but maybe because I don't know how to ask. It's not that I say,
if you don't
say you want to be a
ask,
manager.
The same thing happened to me. I was at a certain level, so I started going around. How do you get to the next level? Oh, I don't know. Okay, I'll go to HR. Keep asking till you find some answers.
Okay.
And then if you can't find the answer, say, well, maybe it's within myself, and then maybe say, I think I want to take some training, or do a 360 feedback, or get an executive coach, or, right, so but ask, because the worst they can say is, well, I don't know.
Look through WITI's membership and find a mentor.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Branding, networking.
Hi, Rachel Kent here. I heard one of you mention that you had a women's professional network, and I was curious to hear more about that. And maybe the general question is, what can women at a company do in an organized way to help each other?
You're talking about, sorry, was it in reference to a remark I made?
I think it was to the women's professional development.
Okay,
So Applied Materials actually sponsors employee resource groups, which is a great opportunity. They give us funding, they give us support, and basically they kind of let us develop what's going to be useful to us. And so they don't say, well, here's your directive for networking, because they could just go do that. They don't need us. But I personally believe that it's an important part to get involved. If you're vested in your career, if you're vested in your company, and you're vested in bettering yourself and your colleagues, that just can't be bad. And so in terms of creating a network, I would encourage you, if your company doesn't have one, sit down and think about it, how to figure that out. But say to yourself, what is the goal that you want out of the networking? Is it professional, right? Is it career development? Is it technical? Is it just general support for dealing with the fact that we all work like we work? And so think about what the goals of that network are, and then you can just create a structure around it.
And as soon as the panel's done, Elizabeth was sitting right there, so you're really within earshot. Anybody else? Any last minute questions? Oh, over here, over here.
Hi, this is Rashmi from Qualcomm. I had a question for all of you ladies, and it seems like all of you have made very significant career changes throughout your life. Some of you have started technical, moved to business product management, business development, and others have started with supply chain and moved towards engineering. One of the challenges that I have seen personally is trying to convince people, whether it's your management or otherwise, that even though you don't have currently all the skill sets that you need to move to another position, you still want to take it on and learn those skills while you do that. And so I was, because you guys seem to have successfully done that, any feedback, any inputs would be much appreciated.
I think the one point I would make, Rashmi, is you build on what your core strength is. At least for me, that's what has worked. So for example, when I made from a switch to a technical to a product management, the folks who offered me the product management job knew what I was capable of as an engineer and what my strengths were, and they were familiar with me, so they were willing to give me that opportunity to, again, build on that. So I think that's how it worked for me, and I'd imagine that as long as you can have certain positions in your mind and how you can at least relate to how you could get there, I think you would probably be able to make some changes.
Okay, thank you. That's useful.
I'd suggest volunteering to be part of a project. Again, speaking up, asking. There's this project I hear about. It's not in my specific field, but I'd really love to participate. Could I, and then find something you enjoy doing and you're good at doing that you could apply to that, and start working in different projects like that, on project teams. And slowly you'll be able to demonstrate your skills in those areas and then move into a management position in that area. Take classes too, that helps. And again, the networking, talking to people, getting out of your office and talking and expressing your feelings, what you want to do to others is very important, because they can't read your mind. And the passive aggressive kind of thing where you start acting certain ways and expect people to notice, it doesn't work.
Wait, that doesn't work?
Yes.
Oh man, that changes it. So I want to start by agreeing very strongly with what they both said. I think that's excellent piece of advice. It's advice that I got and eventually learned to take. But the other thing I will say to that is you have to believe it yourself. You really have to believe that you can do it. And if you don't believe it's straightforward, if you need more practice to get comfortable with it, but when you believe it, other people will believe in you. So that is something to think about.
The self-confidence is so important. And again, right, don't be afraid and take initiative. Yeah.
Thank you. Very helpful.
All right, any other questions?
Marina Britsky with Kaiser Permanente National Operations. I just recently stepped down from a board director position with Kaiser Permanente Women in Technology. We have about 3,500 members on the email list, yet struggle continually with our regional meetings, face-to-face networking meetings, where we have speakers and invite folks to come and things like that. And that's been constantly a challenge for the board. How has your networking group, your Women in Technology group, dealt with this? And how has this affected your own personal way of doing your individual networking?
So within our network, when I first started working with it, we had a large membership list. We still do, 400 or 500 people. And then we would have events where 20 to 25 would show up. I think is similar to what you're saying. But one of the things that we did was we asked them what they wanted. We said, what do you want to get out of this? Do you want technical talks? Do you want career development? Do you want strategy? And once we kind of figured out what that was, we started tailoring events to that, and they started growing and growing. And once they realized that coming to that event gave them what they wanted, we got a bigger turnout. But we surprisingly weren't always targeted. We were giving ourselves what we wanted, what we thought we needed, and understanding what our members needed was, yeah. And so in terms of how that helped me network, I forget who said it earlier, it's think about 3 things that you can give to the other person and 3 things that they can give back. You're getting as much out of your members as they are out of you, so figure out how to line that up.
And it becomes viral. All you have to do is find a few.
Yeah.
Find the few who will tell somebody else.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing better than giving someone a great experience and they pass it along to others and say, but you really got to try it. You know, just come to the meeting. You'll really enjoy it. And they come, and then they tell their friends. And if you find those, you know, by asking for their feedback, what do you want to see? What do you want to hear? When's the best time to hold it? Is it noon? Is it after work? Is it in the morning? Is it for coffee? Is it for lunch? Right? And make it flexible so you can find the sweet spot.
And what are their concerns, too? Because I know that I've certainly heard not just at Applied, but everywhere, women often worry about, well, if I get involved in a woman's group, or it's taking time, if I have time to go and do that, that means I must be free. So figuring out what their concerns are and how to structure around that is a good thing.
And make it meaningful talk. A lot of times women get together and they talk about trivial things. I mean, I hate to say it, but, you know, talk and have meaty subjects. Don't be afraid.
Jennifer, Suchitra, either of you have any final thoughts?
I think this woman at this table has one.
We actually have to wrap.
Okay.
I was just going to add to that. Michelle Cooper with Applied Materials. I'm part of the Women's Development Network in Austin, Texas.
Great.
And one thing that we did when our membership started to wane is align the objectives of the organization with the business. And we took that to the business heads so that they now encourage their employees to go to these events because we're aligned with what they want. So the angle of what the members want, but also what the bosses want, will help them get there. And tomorrow they're having a 5-minute mentoring, which is a speed dating mentoring thing with not just executives, but all levels. And they're really, and I hate I'm missing it, but
great,
thank you
so much. Yeah. Well, why don't we give a round of applause here? We're about out of time. Applied Materials, Jennifer Sun, Suchitra Subrahmanyan, Hillary Barnhart, and Elizabeth Mayo.